Wonderful people of the internet, welcome back to the Lifestyle Lab, episode number 7. Episode number 7, where we are going to be chatting through New Year's resolutions and why I actually heard, to be honest, I hear this stat every single year, and every time I hear it, it always absolutely, it always absolutely baffles me. It always absolutely shockings me. But that stat is that 90% of people who set New Year's resolutions give up on their New Year's resolutions, but they don't just give up on their New Year's resolutions, they give up on them by the third week in January, which for me is just absolutely outrageous. And I posted about this on Instagram, and I think the reason I find this so shocking is because of how many people I've helped get on top of their health, their fitness, their weight loss, etc. over the years, that I can't believe that so many people are still struggling with this, and I can't believe that there are still so many people needing help. And I think obviously a large part of that is with me kind of being so so tunnel minded, so focused on the people that are in front of me. It's kind of hard to see what's going on outside of that. But I suppose that's kind of what makes what I do so so amazing, and not what I do specifically so amazing, but why I find it so rewarding, and why I find personal training and online coaching just one of the most fulfilling careers in the world. So with that being said, 90% of people giving up on their New Year's resolutions, and not just giving up on them, but by the third week in January, is absolutely crazy. And I think there's a multitude of reasons as to why people do that. It's definitely not down to any one or two reasons. As human beings, we're all very very complex. We have our own feelings, we have our own emotions, we have our own opinions, we have our own lives, etc., etc. So it's very very hard to pinpoint exactly just one reason as to why people give up on their New Year's resolutions. But inside this episode, inside this podcast, we're going to be talking about 4 reasons specifically why I personally think people give up on their New Year's resolutions. So if you are listening to this, you could be one of two people. You could be one, giving up on your New Year's resolutions for the 10th, 12th, 15th, 20th time, 30th time. Who knows how long you've done the rounds of giving up on your New Year's resolutions. Or you may very well be someone who's firing, absolutely smashing it out the park, but this could still very much be you, because we're not quite at that third week in January yet. But this may also well be you in the future, knowing that this is something that you've done before. You've given up on a New Year's resolution. So whichever side of the fence that you sit on, this could very much be you. And as we kind of go through and break down the 4 reasons as to why I think people give up on their New Year's resolutions, you might be thinking to yourself, geez, that's me. Or that has been me. So yeah, without further delay, let's get stuck in about these. And just to piggyback on the last point I made, I hope it's not you. I hope if you are smashing it, and I hope if you are making headways towards your fitness and health goals in 2025, that you're losing the weight that you've always wanted to lose, you're building the muscle that you've always wanted to build. I hope this is you, and I hope you're absolutely fucking smashing it. Okay, so yes, without further delay, let's get into reason number 1 as to why people give up on their New Year's resolutions. So number 1 is people lack structure. And the reason they lack structure is because they quite often don't know what they need to do or what it takes to get the result that they want, because they've never achieved the result that they want before. And There's an analogy that I like to use inside the TFG team that I think kind of sums this up or describes this quite well. In that, if I was to drive somewhere that I had never ever been before, what would I do? And the answer would probably be most commonly, well, you'd follow road signs, you'd put it on Google Maps, Apple Maps, you use an app on your phone, whatever it is that you use to get yourself from A to B, that is probably what you would use if you had never been somewhere before. Yet, when it comes to our fitness results, our weight loss results, we go in a bit blindly with it. And I think this is one of the biggest reasons why people give up. Because again, if I was to get in my car and I was to drive somewhere I'd never ever been before without road signs or without maps, I'd get lost. And if I got lost, I'd probably get pretty fed up. I'd probably get pretty pissed off. I'd probably feel pretty frustrated. I'd probably feel pretty defeated off the back of that as well, and would probably give up pretty quickly. So yeah, liking the analogy to jumping in a car and driving somewhere I've never been before without road maps or an app to help guide me. People's fitness, health, weight loss results, whatever it is that you're training towards, are often quite the same in that they lack the structure, they lack the roadmap, so they give up pretty quickly. Number two, on top of that, generally speaking, is people try to change too much. And what I mean by that is if it's weight loss specifically that you're training towards, again, this podcast is what we're talking about for the most part. We're talking about people who want to lose weight, drop body fat. You go into the new year, you go in motivated, which is something that we'll come to shortly, but you go in motivated, you go in full of energy, you go in committed to change, you go in ready to change, you go in off the back of the festivities, wanting to get somewhat of a routine back as well. And I think in that excitement and in that energy burst, you try to change too much too soon, in that you try to start exercising more when you never did before. You try to eat a lot healthier or eat completely healthy, clean eat, and remove anything that you ever ate before and replace it with fruit, veg. Again, not a bad idea, but quite a shock to the system. You try to, I don't know, you maybe try to get up a little bit earlier. You try to go for more steps than you ever did. You almost kind of, if you haven't thought of it this way before, you almost kind of start to live someone else's life who's been doing this for a lot longer than you have. And again, off the back of that, when you try to do too much, you almost kind of try to live someone else's life, doing habits that they're doing or performing habits that they're doing. You try to exercise so much more than you ever did before. You try to change your nutrition completely. There's no wonder that you completely fall off the wagon. Again, another analogy I like to use is that because and anyone from the TFG team who's watching this or listening to this will be thinking, God, here he goes with his analogies, because I absolutely love an analogy and absolutely love helping people be able to picture this. But again, we're bringing it back to the car. So imagine again, to get from point A to point B, whatever point B's destination is the overall goal that you want to achieve, okay? Let's say the speed limit was 70 miles per hour. Now, at 70 miles per hour, you get there, you get from A to B. Actually, it's probably better to describe it going at 100 miles per hour. So at 100 miles per hour, yes, you get from A to B a lot faster. You're going 100 miles per hour. You're changing everything. You're going super fast. You're exercising more. You're eating better than you ever did. Your habits are aligned more with the result that you want to achieve. Brilliant, good. But you're changing too much too soon. You're going far too fast. Much like going from A to B in a car at 100 miles an hour. Yes, you're getting there faster, but the chances of you crashing and the chances of you hopefully you're not hurting yourself when you're dieting and exercising, but the chances of you veering off the road is a lot higher going 100 miles per hour than it is if you're going 70 miles per hour. Sure, it's going to take you more time getting there, but you get there a lot safer. You give yourself an opportunity to get used to the new habits that you're trying to embed in your life. You give yourself an opportunity to get used to the nutrition that you're starting to eat a little bit better. You start to get used to the new exercise that you're doing. You give yourself a chance to actually learn what it takes to embed a lot of these new habits and these new structures in your life. And how that would look, so 100 miles per hour is you changing your exercise, your nutrition, your habits, all at once. What 70 miles per hour might look like is, instead of trying to train 5 times a week, maybe it's training 2 times a week. Maybe it's not looking at exercise specifically, maybe it's looking at nutrition. Instead of eating 1,200 calories a day, which is very much a target that you might be trying to eat at this moment in time, putting yourself into quite a big deficit, a deficit that you have no right being at, and is like driving at 100 miles an hour down the motorway. Maybe it's eating 1,600 calories, a little bit less of an aggressive deficit. Maybe it's, instead of trying to do 10,000 steps a day when you've been used to doing 3,000-4,000 steps a day, maybe it's going 70 miles per hour, it's 6,000 to 7,000 steps a day. It's giving yourself far more achievable habits that's going to be much easier for you to stay on the road and get to your final destination, which is obviously the result that you're trying to achieve. Yeah. So number 1, people lack structure. And 2, you try to change too much too soon. You go 100 miles an hour down the motorway instead of going at 70 and giving yourself an actual chance at developing the habits that you need to, 1, achieve the result that you want, but 2, actually give yourself the opportunity to sustain that result past the point of when you achieve it. Number 3, you rely on motivation. Now, New Year is obviously a very, very motivating time. I said this in the last podcast. I've said this on social media and stuff as well. New Year is the time for motivation. People feel motivated, and I think the reason we feel that way is because we like clear beginnings, we like clear endings, we like to compartmentalize things, we like to organize things, we like structure. And with it being the new year, it's the clear beginning of something. And depending on how the year was for you, how last year was for you, that could be a clear end of something that you want to leave behind, which makes New Year the perfect time to start anew, start afresh, feel excited about something, and try again, like I was saying earlier in this episode, do a lot. Get caught up in the energy of that and try to do too much too soon. Just dive straight back into things. But what you do is you rely on that long term. And I don't mean to sound like a bit of a wet blanket here, but motivation, well, you'll know yourself. You'll know yourself because maybe one of the reasons that you're listening to this episode is because you know, based on however many times you've tried to achieve this result before, that motivation is pretty quick to fuck off when you need it. Okay, so we know that it's not something that's going to stick around, and we're almost kind of trying to think ahead in that situation where, yes, we're trying to make the most of motivation as it is right now. Again, new year, we like clear beginnings, we like getting caught up in that. It feels good. But knowing that motivation isn't going to achieve the result for you is a good place to start. And I think relying on that long term is a big mistake. And that almost kind of goes without saying, because I know that you know that. Because again, there'll be people who are listening to this who gone through this whole rigmarole of starting to achieve the result that they want to achieve, and watching the wheels fall off. So yes, you rely on motivation long term. And again, here he goes with another one of his analogies. But I was going to say the TFG team love it. I don't actually know if they do. I hope they do. Nah, I know they do. But again, always love it with the visuals. So motivation is a lot like the thrusters on a rocket ship. Okay, now when a rocket ship is stationary, it obviously shoots up into the air, and it shoots up into the air via the thrusters on the side. Okay, now again, like motivation, the thrusters on the side of the rocket are going to be what gets you going, is what gets you fired up, is what gets you shooting the rocket, which is your journey towards the result that you want, going, gets you going fast. But as soon as the rocket hits the atmosphere, it hits space, the thrusters no longer work, and the rocket's no longer going at the pace that it once was. Now, obviously, luckily for the rocket, it's got systems in place that help guide it to where it needs to go. But as soon as the thrusters hit the atmosphere, they get into space, they break off, and they disappear. A lot like your motivation. Obviously, unlike the rocket, by that point, by the time motivation's broke off and it's deserted you, you haven't quite developed the systems and the habits needed in order to keep carrying you towards the result that you want, because you've tried to do too much too soon and you lack the structure that's inevitably been missing up until that point. So obviously, once your motivational thrusters have broken off the rocket that is your journey towards your fitness goal, you have nothing to rely on to keep you going. You have, again, zero structure, zero systems that the rocket has to keep guiding you towards the result that you want. And number 4, kind of off the back of all those things, you're far too harsh on yourself. You are way too harsh on yourself. And it goes, I was going to say it goes against the grain. It doesn't go against the grain. Like, it's very, I think we live in a society, right, that struggles with its weight loss. And we know that given that obesity rates have increased year in, year out. People are carrying more body fat than they ever have before. So for you to not get this right is very common and very normal. I want you to know that if you're someone who's failing with their weight loss, failing with their fat loss, you're not the exception. This is very common. And again, like I said, we see it in the stats, and that people are carrying far more body fat than they ever have before. But for whatever reason, we treat ourselves, when we fall off the wagon and we lose motivation and we've done too much too soon, we're going at 100 miles an hour, and inevitably we've lacked the structure that helps us get the result that we want in the first place. We beat ourselves up far too much and far too often. And I also want you to know that's very normal as well, because feeling like a failure, feeling like you've lost, feeling defeated are not nice feelings to have. So it's very common for you to feel that way. But what I also want you to know is, if and when you do feel that way, and you probably have felt that way, is that you're not the exception, because there are thousands, millions of people who are in the exact same position as you, who have struggled with their weight loss, given the stats, given what we know about obesity rates. So again, don't be surprised if you're sitting listening to this, not getting it right and not getting the result that you want. Or if you are someone who is getting more of the result that you want, absolutely phenomenal. But also accepting this may very well be you, because you've started like this before. So again, as and when that happens, don't beat yourself up, because you're not the exception. You're not the only one. And the only thing that I would recommend is Obviously, getting yourself some help, which is what I provide, and we do it very, very well. So if you decide that reaching out to me and asking for help is something that you would like, then please honestly do not hesitate to ask me. I'd be more than happy to help and even discuss seeing if joining the TFG team is the right step for you. But having listened to any of the 4 reasons when it comes to structure, you try to change too much, you rely on motivation, and then you absolutely hammer yourself into the ground off the back of these things. If any of these are you, then revisit these, put something in place, get yourself a structure, go a little bit slower on the motorway instead of 100 miles an hour. Can we drop down to 70 as long as we're still moving forward? For sure you can. Relying on motivation, again, we love motivation when it comes around. Of course we do. But it's fleeting and it will fucking abandon you quick. And then, even failing all of those things, try not to be too harsh on yourself, please. Do what you can and get back on the wagon, because that's going to be the only way that you're going to get yourself to the result that you want. And yeah, lastly, if you feel like you need more support and more help on that, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. I would be absolutely more than happy to help. But I think, yes, it is quite staggering to hear that 90% of people by the 3rd week in January have given up on their New Year's resolutions. So hopefully with me kind of talking about some of these points here, it gives you a little bit more of an awareness as to maybe what to expect, but what you can do off the back of these things as and when they happen to you. So thank you very much for listening to this, folks. If you have absolutely any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. If you are listening to this on Spotify or YouTube, please check the links down below. You can follow me on Instagram. We also have a free Facebook group as well, where we deliver advice on fitness, health, lifestyle, and everything sort of aligned with fat loss and weight loss as well. So hopefully we'll see you in there, and thank you very much for listening.